And we are live. Hello, Motor Rider World fans, and welcome to Talking MotoGP Le Mans, the 1000th Grand Prix in the history of Grand Prix motorcycle racing, and what a place to do it. I mean, Le Mans was voted the best GP of 2022. Unfortunately, that was the one European round that I didn't make it to, but from what I hear, it was simply fantastic. Well, I mean, the pictures and the video was there for all of us to see, and this year was no exception either. I managed to go to Le Mans last year to the World Endurance race with Sheridan, who crashed on the Friday and then went to hospital and didn't race and just left me hanging around the pits. But it's a fantastic place to witness motorcycle racing. You walk in those gates and you can feel, the Le Mans 24-hour. You can just feel the heritage and the racing history that's in it. That was one thing I found going to a lot of the races in Europe last year, Mugello's and all of that. As soon as you walk through those gates, a fanboy like me, I get overwhelmed by it all, to be honest. Really just in this historic place. And for the 1000th Grand Prix to happen there, I think it was fitting. I think it was fantastic. The French crowd were out in full force and they were not disappointed. None of us racing fans were disappointed worldwide. It was sensational racing. All the categories so far this year have been brilliant. The sprint race has been an excellent introduction. I think we've spoken about that many times. And I think it's been a brilliant introduction into the racing. It's made it more exciting. It's kept people in the championship hunt. It's taken people out of the championship hunt. It's brought so many different elements and factors into the MotoGP championship. The biggest being excitement, and I think it's worked hands down. John McLaughlin, Brian Ritchie, Justin DP, Scott Mordaunt, Flying Spanners in brackets. I like that. Nicole Briet, all the way from Cape Town. Chris Hart, Yvonne Pretorius. Can't wait for the show, Yvonne. Yeah, we've got a lot to talk about, and I've got a great guest joining me tonight. Another man that is just filled with information and has been there and done it. So always great to chat to these brilliant minds of motorcycle racing. Ace of Spades, how's it, Rob? Cyril Gaming, how's it, Uncle Rob? Like that name there, Cyril Gaming. Dustin Delaporte, let's go. How you doing, Uncle Rob? I'm very good, thank you, Dustin. Yanni Stander, Daniel Standuha. I always get that one wrong. I just call him Daniel S. Daniel S, that's your new name. Anthony Carrero, Warwick Evans. It was indeed epic racing. Beverly Urendal, how are you, Beverly? David Ace. Hello, and hello to all our listeners. Mike Fololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololololol Swart, Bradley Johnson, Bevan Hope, John McLaughlin again. What a racing weekend indeed it was. Anton Smith, hello Rob, another wild weekend of racing. It was indeed wild, but action-packed. Stephen Berry, thank you so much for joining us, Stephen Berry. I always scroll to wait and see until I see Stephen Berry. Sven Grunner, also great to have Sven, another one of our great minds in the comment side, just to help me when I get it wrong. And just keep everyone updated in the comments if I don't get to you. John Fernandez, Lamar coverage, all the extra reports, the past winners, everything about the weekend was just awesome. Having Brad and Riche on the podium was amazing. Wimpy, that's from John Fernandez. Wimpy van der Berg. Uncle Rob, why is there so many negative comments about Jack that he is getting more TV time than Brad? Cyril Gaming, we'll touch upon that. No doubt about that. Mike Wallace, any news on Darren? Mike, so yeah, I didn't make Lamar on the recovery, and I'm pretty sure he'll be out next time at Mugello. A couple of weeks off, so I think just made, and I think it was a wise decision. If you're not in current MotoGP, Moto2, and Moto3, if you're not 98%, you're going into a gunfight with a banana. So get yourself 100% fit, and I think that's what Darren is focusing on. Go and attack at Mugello, a track that, remember, last year Darren Binder featured very well on the MotoGP bike. So I think he was looking at getting really fit for that one, and giving Moto2 a good go there. Hello Rob, what is happening in that little island? David House. Yeah, it's sun's shining, it's everything's going very well, thank you David, on the little island. So yeah, life's all good. Hope everything's going well back home in South Africa. Miss the place, miss all our friends, my family and everyone, but luckily we get to do this to catch up. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I said I've got a very special guest, and I do. It is the Robbie show this weekend, because I've got a namesake joining me, but he's a man that's been there and done it, former Grand Prix racer, has, done the whole sleeping in a car to go GP racing, has, done the full factory ride racing, has, helped many a top South African rider and other riders throughout their careers. He's a very, very well-known name, and I'm very proud to have him on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Robbie Petersen. Robbie, how are you doing?
Rob, how are you?
Yeah, good on yourself, man. Thank you so much for joining me, and great to have you on the show, especially with all your knowledge of everything that's motorcycle racing. Of course, you've been there, done that with some of your past racing experiences. Just update us on some of your Grand Prix racing ventures that you've done.
Rob, first thing I want to say hi to my sister, because I don't get to talk to her very much, so good that Bev's listening in. Rob, I think the best description I ever had was Joe Alves said to me one time. He said, "Man, I'm an up-and-coming has-been with a bright future behind me." That's kind of how I feel right now. Up-and-coming has-been.
It's typical Joe, yeah.
Only Joe, yeah. No, Rob, I mean, I didn't do many GPs, a couple of Kyalami, a couple of Laguna. I suppose the one thing was the 91 GP on that 500, which honestly turned out to be, should have been one of the best weekends of my life, and turned into an absolute nightmare. We got there, the bike wasn't running. Dunlop gave us production superbike tires to use, and there were like 4 grades of tires, and we had tested there 3 weeks prior, I think. So Wayne, Kaczynski, Schwantz, whoever Schwantz's teammate got like the A grade, like Chandler, Juan Garriga got B grade. The privateers, Eddie Laycock and them got C grade. We got production tires to use. So as I said, when we had tested, we'd been on the B grade tires. And I remember saying to Dave, I said, "Geez, Dave, feeling okay. I think I could run with Garriga at the test." So I'm going, well, that's going to be okay, Anyway, long story short, terrible weekend. Got lapped by just about everyone. I remember Gardner lapped me on the last lap, and that was my quickest lap of the race. Was 30. Well, I needed 31 laps. So it was a 32 lap race, but I did 31. So yeah, most of my GPs were just not ready. 1983, I got a TZ the week before. I did Valcom at Goldfields the week before the GP, and did really good at Goldfields. Like went at it with Mario Rodimer, got to the Grand Prix, and I was young and didn't know how to work on a bike. And I had my best mate Barry White working for me, and Barry was brilliant, but also young and inexperienced on GP bikes. So I think I was like 7th quickest the first day, and I thought, hey, here we go. Mm-hmm. That night we decided to do the top end, and I was working on the bike, and Barry was doing one side, I was doing the other. And to do the ignition timing, you had to leave the hose clamp loose on the water pump. Mm-hmm. So I left it loose thinking Barry's going to do that, and then I'll go and tighten it afterwards. And guess who didn't tighten it afterwards?
Oh, God.
Big high sider, yeah. So most of my Grand Prix stories don't end well. Same Laguna 1989, I didn't even have a start. Showed up there because those were the days when 60 guys used to enter,
Yeah. Mm.
So I show up there and didn't have a start, and then the second session somebody pulled out. Some guy, so I was first reserve, so I missed the first session. Snuck in. I think I qualified last. In fact, Miguel Duhamel was my teammate, and I bumped Miguel out, and he didn't make the main event. So. And I remember starting next to Didier de Radigues. He was on the factory bike, a factory Aprilia, and had a great first 2 laps, and then turn 6 at Laguna. There's like a bump there, and that thing chucked me high. So yeah. And then 1990, same thing. I was having a really good practice, and then second day, early morning, I was thinking, okay, I've got to get my time in the morning while the temperature's good, while the track conditions are good. Coming up to the corkscrew, and those obviously the days before tire warmers. And I know everybody says this, but I'm on a lap. You always get that. So I see this guy kind of going up the right-hand side towards the corkscrew, and he was the European champion the year before. I found out later. Mm-hmm. The last minute, I see this guy turning in, and I'm like, oh no. And I still had stainless steel rotors, and I didn't even have cast iron discs on it. So I'm grabbing, and next thing, T-bone the guy. So I broke my scaphoid. So we get up, and this guy is looking at my leathers, and in Italian, Petersen, Peter. So I'm trying to say sorry. And eventually I'm going back. So I grab him with my good arm, and I'm like having a bit of a roll at the side of the track with this guy. So that's why I had to laugh yesterday with Pecco and Benali. That's what it should be, man. Let the boys sort it out. You know?
I was gonna say you pulled a Vinales there on the poor guy. So Robbie, the watching current MotoGP, I mean, obviously,
well, kind of. Sorry, Rob.
Can you hear me?
Rob.
No, it's that American. Yeah, it's that American signal. You got to tell everyone to stop messaging you. There we go. Is that fine now?
I turned my phone off to talk about the GP. Are we okay?
Okay, yeah, there we go. I can see you and hear you now. It comes in and out, but that's fine. Robbie, let's talk about current MotoGP. Obviously, you were talking about those days. You know, you would go and you would get the worst tire possible, and those were the days where riders still got lapped. You know, because there was not such a huge difference between rider, but it was also rider and certainly machinery. Current MotoGP, I mean, I can't remember the last time I saw an actual rider get lapped in MotoGP. And, you know, you finish 19 seconds off the pace and you're one of the worst riders in the world. You know, give us your little 2 cents quickly on where MotoGP is at the moment.
Yeah, Rob. So, and, you know, it's odd to read comments. You know, you read all kinds of stuff. So there's some guys, I almost laugh at the old days, the good old days. And I'm talking about GP, Moto America, you know, because there's this whole thing about Moto America as well, you know, the way it stands right now. I mean, the good old days when Agostini used to lap the guy in third, you know, or for sure there was a time between maybe Schwantz and Rainey and Doohan, you know, but for the most part, it is incredible. I mean, I've just never seen it better, never seen it healthier. Right? And I think it's just a natural thing. You know, when we were young, you know, guys only used to start racing when they were maybe 16, 17, or whatever it was. Now you get these kids that are getting born, still in their nappies, getting put on a pocket bike at the local karting track in Spain and Italy. And so just the pool is so much bigger, isn't it? You know, so the talent pool is so much bigger. All these academies all over the world, which puts into perspective what Brad and Darren are doing even more, I think. You know, when you see the upbringing that those kids have. Having said that, all credit to Northern Regions for doing what they did with our kids.
Yeah,
Matthew, Cam, that CBR 150 Cup in there, Rob, was, and we didn't appreciate it at the time, to be honest with you. You know, looking back, when you look at all the guys that came out of that little project, you know, and Neil Herron and Neil Forbes with all the academies and stuff. So MotoGP is incredibly healthy right now, isn't it?
It is. It really is. And heading into the 1000th Grand Prix that took place at Le Mans this weekend, I mean, the big talking point heading into it was, of course, Marquez and the return of Marquez and his penalty and everything. We're not going to get into that because we'll be here for days. But
let's get into it, Rob.
You know, what is your thought on? We'll start there. It's a good topic. What is your thought on the way race direction is going at the moment? Obviously, you know, Freddie Spencer and there's a couple of other guys on the panel. There's two other guys with that kind of old school approach that are trying to make the sport safer and whatever. But how do you look at the situation with all these penalties and everything that's going on at the moment?
Geez, Rob, so that's where I am old school, obviously. You know, I'm going, man, there's a limit. There's a limit. And like you said, when you've got 16 guys or whatever it is, now within points something of a second of each other, it's just naturally going to become a barging match. You know, it's just naturally. Now, there's things that I've got no experience with in terms of the aero. I don't know what aero does to these bikes. You know, so I think that's maybe adding a little bit to the drama. Just the bike's naturally wider, guys getting their air taken away from them on corner entry and stuff like that. What worries me more than anything is how much the riders. I mean, I looked like Marini was bitching about Brad after the sprint race. Yeah, how can you possibly, you know? But yeah, I'm bitching about Marc Marquez after the sprint race. And I'm going, come on. It almost reminds me of, you know, I was a big rugby fan. And it reminds me going back in the old days when you get a guy like Scott Berger, who had a reputation for like infringing offsides, you know?
Yes.
And you get the other team like, hey, ref, you know what I mean? They're kind of reminding the ref all the time, you got to watch that guy, you got to watch that guy. So it's almost, are they playing into that a little bit? You know, obviously not a fan of all these penalties. I don't know what the answer is, in all honesty. So, and I met Graham Charrington. Dave and I were speaking about this, and Graham goes, you get like Oliveira, who gets punted out of 2 races.
Mm.
What's in it for him? It's almost like, so the guy who gets knocked off, say Marquez, for instance, knocks him off, comes back the next race, Marquez should have to give him half of his points from the next. I know it gets too complicated, but it's almost like, where do you draw the line? And I know this is not going to go down well, but when I saw those two having a little bit of a dust up, and almost leave it to the riders, let them go back to the pits afterwards. And the other thing that the guys should be encouraged to do is not to comment until they've seen video footage of that incident. Because Rob, I've been there. Especially the old days, those old Arrow helmets you get. This is your peripheral, so you don't see a front wheel. And I remember one race at Kyalami, I'm turning in, and next thing Russell Wood, boom, takes away my handlebars. I want to go over there, and I'm raging. Where's Russell? Where's Russell? And cousins like holding me back. I watched the footage on the TV like a little bit. I don't know, it's kind of 6 or 2 threes. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think the guys need to just take a minute, watch the footage first before they start pitching.
What my worry is now is what race direction are doing is like you said, they're giving riders ammunition to complain. So a Marini and a Bezzecchi and a Bagnaia and a Marquez 5 years ago wouldn't have complained as much about those moves. They would have gone, we've all complained. No one wants to be passed. And we would all complain. But now, knowing that there's penalties in mind, the riders go, it's almost like football. If I get slide tackle, I'm going to roll around so I can blow card. And that's what I worry about, is that the riders now have this ammunition. Or if I get passed and hit, it must be a penalty rather than...
No, and so, but on getting hit, going back to Jerez, so when Bagnaia touched Miller,
yes,
to be honest, I mean, it was a hard move, and one that I don't really like those kind of moves. I've got to be honest with you. This rubbing racing thing isn't for me. I don't agree with it. But what I'm saying, then the Martin, who was it? Who ran it upside and then side?
On the inside of Martin, it was Miller.
So but the difference was Martin picked it up.
Yes.
If Martin had kept leaning on him, they would have touched. And it reminds me, and I know this is a subject that probably don't want to get into, but I know riders in the past who they'll just keep leaning. They'll keep leaning, whereas other guys will go, is somebody coming and just pick it up a little bit. So where do you draw that line? Like you get a guy who's going, okay, I'll pick it up. And so I think it's almost encouraging them. No, I'm just going to stand. I'm going to keep slamming the door on him because, stewards are watching, Freddie Spencer's watching, and maybe he's going to dish out something.
Well, this is the thing. So looking at the Le Mans weekend, okay, looking at Jerez, Bagnaia on the inside of Miller, he gets the penalty of you've got to drop one position. In the Miller Martin, nothing happens. Then you look at Le Mans. Let's take Le Mans for instance. So there's the incidents with Marquez and Pecco Bagnaia in the sprint race. Marquez shoves it on the inside. There's contact with Pecco, no penalty. I agree, no penalty. Good hard racing. Then there's the Brad Marini incident. Great, no penalty. Good stuff. Then there's the Bezzecchi on Marquez incident where he shoves it on the inside and he runs him wide. That you've got to get demoted one position. And at first I go, but they all kind of the similar kind of thing. Why is it a penalty? Then I looked afterwards, and this is where race direction need to come out and explain themselves, because we're just getting this under investigation and there's a penalty. We don't hear any explanation for why.
Right.
So Bezzecchi you've got to let go of that position because irresponsible riding. Now, if I look at the incident, Bezzecchi shoves it on the inside at a very tricky corner. Shoves it on the inside and he was never actually going to make the corner, and he forces himself and Marc Marquez wide. Okay, I can understand a penalty for that because you were never really going to make the corner. So you've upset, but you've really gone in there with no intention of actually making the corner. Fine. Whereas some of the other incidences, like Marc Marquez went in, a little bit of contact, but both riders make the corner. Brad and Marini, both riders make the corner. Okay. Where it gets really complicated is, again, like you said, so what are the stewards using as that's a penalty and that's not a penalty?
Sure. Yeah.
And they're not defining that. And that is what making it the
Yeah.
big talking point that it is.
Honestly. And in the heat of the moment, I mean, man, I just, Rob, I'm with you. I truly don't get it. I don't get it. You know, Cam and I talk about this. Shay and I talk about it. I'm going, same thing. You're like, maybe let the boys sort it out in the pits afterwards. You know, like, go, hey, you do that to me one more time, stand by. You know, and we've all been there, done it. You know, we used to have some bullies back in South Africa and didn't used to say much. Just wait until the next session, boom, go and run them off the track, and then you go to them and you go, hey, you want to play games? Let's go at it. You know, so I know that's fantasy thinking. It can't happen like that. But man, the involvement from the stewards and that is it just seems way too much. You know?
It's just crazy because in that race, every time there's something, that graphic pops up and you're like, you know, I'm trying to watch
You're
race.
You're just waiting for it.
Waiting for something to happen. And I just worry, as Sven Grinner points out there, even the riders kind of going, well, what can I do? What can I do? Brad still said, you know, he wanted to put a move on Bagnaia in the final turn at Jerez. First of all, he kind of knew it was going to be a risky move, but then there's the running through his mind of, shit, well, do I get a penalty? And then there goes my podium.
Yeah.
So instead of the races now just thinking, let's go race. And there's always going to be, you know, it's racing. And like you said, you've got to let it be that racing. It cannot be controlled by outside parties. Once those guys are on the racetrack, you've got to let them go in a way and decide it for themselves. Yeah. Yes, you've got to look at the safety factor. But for me, the way they're handling it, that's not the safety factor. The safety factor for me is, if you want to make it safe, you've got to slow these guys down. Because these tracks aren't getting wider and bigger.
No, that's it. Right.
Bikes are getting faster, tires are getting faster, riders are getting faster.
You've just struck on something that I wanted to talk to you about with tires, but carry on.
So that's how I look. People say, how do you make the sport safer? It's the same with LeMans TT. How do you make it safer? Well, you got to slow the guys down.
Yeah.
LeMans TT, the bikes, again, are getting faster, 200 and something horsepower, carbon wheels, this. Yeah. So in MotoGP's case as well, you create the sprint race where you're giving riders shorter time to get results. And then you don't want them to pull these, not desperate moves, but these hard moves with limited laps. So you're creating these environments and giving riders and manufacturers and teams ammunition to go faster and push boundaries, but say, no, but you can't. We've got to make it safer. It doesn't make sense to me.
I think, honestly, like looking back on this year, I think the Marquez incident is the only one that really justified. And he was the one. I think this weekend he was going, that's probably the only one this weekend that I deserved a penalty. You know, then he gets flack for getting injured, and everybody's going, oh, he's weaseling his way out. He's just a rider in that place. Trust me, he's not the guy who's filing protests and all that kind of appeals and whatever. You know, so
it's just frustrating because what it creates is, if I look at all the social media that Marc Marquez got to it, and that's why I wanted to start with Marc Marquez. To me, I'm a huge Marc Marquez fan. I'm a fan of all of them because they give their heart and soul. And what impressed me with Marc Marquez is he's had the 3 races off the bike, no time on this Kalex Honda, climbs on it, and first session goes and crashes his brains out, and you think, Marc, just take it easy. You know, he goes in the race. No other Honda was even close to where Marc was, but there he was pushing for the podium, crashes. But you've got to give the guy credit that he just never knows when to give up. And it's the same with Darren. It's his biggest asset is his biggest, down. But I can't believe the amount of hate that goes around for Marc Marquez.
Look, Rob, I think it's good. When I say it's good to have that, you know. And honestly, I read the comments on your pages and stuff, you know. And our friend Peter Eckrol, you know, he gets pretty riled up, like all the hate against Marc, you know. And then people reply to him now, you know, because he goes, look, half of you guys have never raced a motorcycle.
Yeah.
And rightfully, guys are replying, but it wasn't for us. We wouldn't have anything to talk about. So
sure.
The thing that gets me is the personal attacks. That's
yes.
Honestly, to call him, and a good friend of mine, you know, calls him a pompous, righteous, privileged, or entitled guy. And I'm going, have you ever met him? That's what I want to know, because I've never met him, but I've been pretty close to him, and I watched him very closely on Thursday set up. You might have met him, I don't know, but
yes.
I watched him at like Indianapolis, walking around with his backpack on, high-fiving everybody. There's certain guys who are very good in front of the camera, and not so good behind the camera. Away. With him, what you see is what you get. Yeah. That guy walking around the pit, smiling, high-fiving everybody when there's no cameras around. Cam got to do a track walk with him at Coda. Just Cam Bobia, Marquez, and Cam. Now look, it's no secret we are big Marquez fans.
Yes, yeah.
But when he does wrong, you got to go, well, that wasn't right.
Yeah.
In his Moto2 days, I was the first to go. Some of those moves, like on the brakes, when you're going like kind of outbreak you guy and then move over on them.
Shifting,
I hated that.
Yeah, it's horrible. Yeah.
But then going back to like the bowling ball thing is, well, finishing sharp on Cam. Cam was this track walking. You just go, yeah, what a good, just normal, just normal guy. The bowling ball thing is, and maybe cognitive bias is a real thing.
Yeah.
So am I missing something? And I'd love to just, for sure. I'm trying to think of all the guys he's tagged. So there was Rossi in Argentina for sure. I think Danny Pedrosa, we rode into the back of him, remember, knocked off his wheel speed sensor. But how many guys is he? I'm trying, and I mean this. Like, what have I missed? How many guys has he actually knocked off? I'm not sure. I just don't know. And keeping in mind, since 2013, he's had more camera time than anybody could. He's always in the camera because he's naturally up front. So he's been under the microscope. I don't know how many guys he's actually knocked off, but I can think of Rossi in Argentina, and the thing with Danny. On MotoGP, not Moto2.
Yeah, I was going to say in Moto2 there was the Tom Lutis and all that, but in MotoGP, listen, but that's what you love about sportsmen. That's what I love about some of our rugby players is they never say die. That's what I love. Yeah. Darren Binder, forget the personal relationship. I am a fan of a Darren Binder and a Brad Binder because of their never say die, go for it. So, you know what I mean? That's what makes me a fan. That's what makes me a fan of Marc Marquez. And I've said
that's how we became fans, Rob. I'll just tell you real quick. Like this 25K, And honestly, the attraction which sounds a little bit crazy, but he got him a podium at Donington. He was like 15, maybe 16, As this little guy bounced around, and he just resembled Cam. Him and Cam kind of look at. So we go, it looks like so. That's how. But then you watch this guy, man, and he's crashing. The front end's gone, and he's trying to get his leg back over the thing. Oh, it's like going A over T. The thing is destroyed, and he's trying to pick that thing up. It's like a Monty Python thing. Fight, you coward! The guy's got no arms or legs left. It's fight, So yeah.
But you know what it is, Robbie, and I've said it a lot of times. Last year, going to all the races really did open my eyes because even before that, I felt like as a journalist, as a fan, I had the right to say and do things.
Yeah.
And then when I spent time with him in the paddock, and unfortunately, these riders have become products to us. They are our products. We own them. And then when I got to spend time with him last year, I also had my nose up with certain riders like Maverick and just the way they act. How lucky in a factory Yamaha ride, then you want to. And then you get to meet and know these guys. And like you said, you don't really get to spend a lot of time with them, but you see how they deal with certain things. And you go, you know what? These are human beings at the end of the day with feelings, and they're just trying to live their lives, do the best they can. They're competitive. To be at that level, you've got to be competitive. You've got to have a certain amount of arsehole and arrogance in you. That's what makes you the best. Nice guys finish last. There's a saying like that for a reason. But that doesn't mean they like that all the time. Yeah, when the visor goes down, Brad also turns into an animal. And, a lot of these guys turn into animals. So I agree with you. I don't like the personal attacks. The Marc must retire now, and he's over, and he's an idiot. You know what? There's constructive criticism. And I think we need to, as human beings, that's where society is actually going. We've all got opinions, and we all just need to be so cutthroat about them, and when we don't have to. But to round off with Marc Marquez, it was such a pity he didn't finish on the podium. I really wanted him to because he deserved it. The shining or the big positive for Marc Marquez and Honda from this weekend, it was the first time he climbed on that calyx, and he was qualified second, and he was dicing up front. Yes, he was pushing past its limits, but it just shows you how good Marc Marquez is, and potentially there's something there with this calyx.
I'm not sure about that, Rob. And I was listening to Simon Crayford, and he goes for him, the heart of a bike is the motor.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah,
you know what I mean. And I think he's onto something there. Seriously, you know what I mean. It's
that Honda wasn't fast. I mean, you watch those onboards. He comes out, he drives, and those Ducatis and the KTM's.
Yeah,
and the Honda. That's what used to be the strength of the Honda. So yeah.
Look, just to finish up on Marquez, the other thing that kind of gets me a little bit is how the bike was developed.
No, we lost Robbie now. American signal. Robbie, just reset. If you can hear me, just reset yourself and come back, and then we'll bring you back in because you've frozen. I wonder if you've just lost your signal there. So we'll get Robbie back in a second. Is he back? No, he's not. He's still frozen. So we'll get him back as soon as he realizes. He's probably still talking about Marquez and doesn't realize he's gone off. But yeah, I heard the Simon Crayford comment about the engine is the heart is the soul of a motorbike, and I agree with that. And I think, I mean, I was saying there's a lot of positives with Marc and the Cadillacs and where they were, but in hindsight, they're almost where they were before, with Marc overriding this Honda to be competitive at the front, while all the other Hondas are nowhere near. Alex Rins, I mean, from winning at Kota to nowhere. Jean Mir is just, I feel for him, but at the same time, it's like, what a fall from grace in many ways. So, yeah, the Honda thing is just, it's this. You just find yourself scratching your head, and what do Honda need to do? While we wait for Robbie, let's just get some comments going down the sign here. Sven Grunner, the riders don't know where they stand rules-wise. Sometimes they get penalized, sometimes not. They're complaining to get consistent applications of the rules so that they know exactly where they are. I agree with that. That's exactly what we need. Rob, don't you think a rider must be penalized with a long lap penalty when he ruins another guy's race like Alex did Brad? Vimpy, I don't think so, because you've got to treat every situation as it comes. And did he ruin his race by literally going out and like I said, the Bezzecchi move on Marquez, where he kind of went in, he was never really going to make the corner and ran him wide. I don't want to see penalties, but if in modern day racing there are penalties, so I could understand that penalty. The Bagnaia on Miller move at Jerez, I still don't think it was a penalty. I can understand it being viewed as a very hard move, in that situation. Alex Marquez's penalties now that he came out of Le Mans with, I agree with, because let's take the tagline irresponsible riding. Was Bezzecchi's move on Marquez irresponsible riding? Well, yes, because he broke late and he was never going to make the corner and he took Marc with him. Was Alex Marquez's move irresponsible riding? I look at it and I say yes, because early on in the race, probably didn't have tires up to temperature or whatever. Turn 3, goes shoving it on the inside, had to avoid one of the riders, shoves it on the inside, was never going to make the corner, and he forces Brad ride. So was that irresponsible riding? Yes. A three grid penalty. I don't agree with at all. The Marini and Alex Marquez incident was just a racing incident, and thankfully nothing more serious came out of it, because as soon as it happened to Marini, I just had flashbacks of Marco Simoncelli tucking the front and kind of pulling him back into the line of fire, and Alex Marquez nowhere to go. So yeah, Vimpy, you've got to look at it situation by situation, and this is where, to me, Race Direction are getting it wrong. They're making their decisions, but they're not giving us clarity on why the decision was made. So yeah, I think it's an open book. I think there's loopholes, and it's going to be a big talking point for a very long time, this whole Race Direction thing, because it needs more clarity, and it needs to be more justified in a lot of situations. It needs to be more clear in a lot of situations. And like Sven said, a lot of the riders are just asking for consistency. If I got a penalty for doing this and this guy did this, why is he not getting a penalty? And what are the penalties? Is it a long lap penalty? Is it drop a spot? Is it a 3 grid penalty? Why is there this inconsistency with giving penalties out type thing? So it's always going to be a big question point. I'm very glad to say that we've got Robbie Petersen back, so let's get him back in and he can finish his telling us about finishing off on Marc Marquez. Thank you, Robbie, for coming back.
Sorry, Roberts. I think we're in the tornado city. I think there's some tornadoes going on around us. So. No, I was just going to say, like this thing about Marquez, the bike developed around him. And 2013, he jumped on that thing and won. It's like, so what, did Honda develop it before he got on the thing? So that I don't understand. And then in terms of the testing, and that's what I wanted to ask you, even with the KTM, and there's a lot of praise for Danny and Pedrosa, obviously, with the KTM side. And, a test rider can only test what the engineers give him as well. So, whoever's testing that thing can be going, well, it's doing this, it's doing that. And it seems like no matter what these guys get given, it doesn't really change the characteristic of the bike that much, does it? So either KTM have just got clever engineers, or they are listening to the riders a little bit more, which seems like a common criticism of some of the other factories. But in terms of like the bike being developed around one guy, I don't agree with that either.
Yeah. I don't think so. If I look at KTM, Pit Pyra came out when KTM went into MotoGP and he said, we're going a Honda route. Honda are the reference because they were winning. And they got some things right, and yes, and whatever. And in the last 2 years, Pit Pyra still came out. I did an interview with him, and he still came out and went, well, Ducati's now becoming the new reference. So we've got to shift our focus. And they've done that. They went and spent ridiculous amounts of money on taking all these top Ducati techs. I think it was brilliant to bring Miller with his Ducati crew. So you're bringing all that information, because at the same time, it's almost the problem that Yamaha have got now. You've got a Fabio Quartararo and a Frankie Morbidelli who came into MotoGP and only knew a Yamaha. So you're trying to develop this Yamaha to get better, but you only know Yamaha. And KTM had the same. They had a Brad Binder and a Miguel Oliveira who only knew a KTM. And Brad's done phenomenal things, Brad and his team. I think Brad is such a meticulous mind that he's, he works at getting it right, and and that meticulous side, he almost reminds me a little bit of a Danny Pedrosa in a way when it comes to bike setup. He doesn't force the issue. He'd rather be, and this is what frustrates us fans. He'd rather not do well in an FP1 or an FP2 to focus on a Sunday. This weekend was another example. People went on Facebook, why is Brad the only one using a medium front? He's never going to do well. And there was a Jack focusing on a soft front, but look where Jack ended up with that. Exactly. And okay, Brad's race was ruined on Sunday by what happened. But Brad very much thinks the bigger picture, and that frustrates us. But that's the kind of mentality you have. Now, getting back to Honda's situation is, great. Their problem is they're trying to find a path, and I don't think they trust themselves enough. This is the biggest company in the world with all these championships behind them, and they just seem to have lost this path. They seem so desperate, and one thing they've lost is time. MotoGP just does not give you time anymore. So they on this rush path of doing this, doing that. But they've, KTM have got it right by bringing in these outside influences that are getting it right in terms of the Europeans.
Right.
Whereas Honda, I don't know. I feel for Stefan Bradl. You make a very good point there. He can only test what he's given. Yamaha, they've got Cal Crutchlow. They're not using him. Bradl has been the most used test rider in the last 3 or 4 years in race conditions and stuff. But, I mean, Simon Crafar hit the nail on the head by saying the soul of a motorcycle is the engine. They've done everything in terms of aerodynamics, chassis, up, down.
Well, the aero thing I'm not so sure.
They haven't focused on his engine. And
I think the aero thing is a whole different dynamic. I think that's thrown a whole new can of worms. You know what I mean? So, because I think from what I understand, Red Bull, KTM have got the Red Bull Formula One team involved in their aero.
Well, I was going to ask you. I asked Simon Crafar, and he definitely thinks that the Europeans at the moment are better off. And it's more down to aero. And if you look at it, you can't argue with that because Ducati seem to get it right. Ducati have got the best combination of engine, electronics, and aero. KTM are kind of putting that together now, like you said, with the help of Red Bull Formula One. But how do big companies like Yamaha and Honda get it so wrong?
I just don't know. But once again, all credit to Ducati. I mean, same thing. It's people complaining, it's a Ducati Cup, so, boy, all credit to them, mate. How hard did they work to get there, and just once again, huge fans of Ducati and KTM. I mean, I'm a big fan of that KTM factory, honestly, because I saw where they came from. Pit Byra, I was going to ask you. I mean, he seems like he's a fan of Brad, and I think he's a great influence on that team, eh?
I'm telling you now, Brad, I've said it time and time again. I'm pretty sure they've given Brad the keys to the building at KTM and just said, listen, please stay with us. We'll give you whatever you want. Yeah. Because, Pit Pyros had that same mentality, very strict, very direct. We know what direction we want to go to. And, I was one of the guys that said, listen, Brad, you're being too loyal here. You got to jump ship. But Brad had this bigger picture of, I know we're going to get it right. I want to be part of that getting it right. And looking at Brad and them now, they are proper contenders, because yes, Sunday the 6th wasn't, the result they wanted, but it wasn't a true reflection on where Brad are. Every single session that Brad and KTM did throughout the Le Mans weekend, the Jerez weekend, they are on pace now.
Well, Augusto Fernandez, look where Fernandez was. Augusto Fernandez is the first couple of laps, I thought, oh, that's good. Kid's got a good start to the race. He's not dropping off, like towards the end of the race. Yeah, there he is, So, yeah, that bike's pretty special.
It's a pretty, Marc Marquez, again, going back to Marc Marquez, because it's a big talking point. People that say he must retire and whatever, you tell me this weekend was not more entertaining with Marc Marquez in it. You can't tell me that.
It's more nerve-wracking for me, I've got to tell you, Rob, because we're so passionate about it. I'm the first to admit, like when he crashed on Friday, twice. And Shane and I talk all the time about race. Dad, what is Marc doing? What is Marc doing? It's like, and then I read these comments. He's going, well, it's either going to be a podium or a yellow flag. At that, after all he's been through. So, but it's double-edged. I mean, law of averages, man. How many times are you going to crash before you hurt yourself again? And I don't want to see anybody get hurt.
Well, that's what I worry about, and that's why I put that post on the Motor Rider World page of his FP1 crash, saying, and people took it the wrong way, that we had put it on almost saying, oh, look at this guy, he crashes all the time. My post was a general concern, like, Marc, please, you've just come back. You can't be doing the old Marc. And then, Sheldon Kwame and a couple of guys said, oh, look at these guys complaining, a guy trying to find the limit. Marc can't be that 2013, I'll go out FP1 and try and find the limit, bounce back from it. He can't do that anymore. Yeah. First of all, you look at Honda's crash bill up till now. At one point they've got to say to him, listen, we need to bag 3 or 4 rounds of results. That's what we need to do. Whether it be 4th, 7th, you're not developing a bike or getting data with it lying on the floor. You're not.
Yeah.
We need a good run of performances, and the same can be said for a Darren Binder. String 3 or 4 results together and then start putting the other pieces in the puzzle. And that is where Brad Binder has been so good throughout his whole MotoGP career. He takes his time, even when we get very frustrated, and he gets very frustrated. He's not happy when he's got to be that patient rider, but sometimes you've got to do that for the end result, which is get the results, get the development in there. And I think that's where the new Marc Marquez needs to take a step back and say, right, I want to push the envelope and I want to win races, but I'm not going to be able to do it if I'm hurting my wrist, if I'm going to be throwing bikes into the weeds. And that is my general concern is, as you just said, at what point it's going to be one crash too many where it is curtains for Marc Marquez. And I don't want to, as a fan, I don't want to see that.
Yeah. The only thing that, obviously the Oliveira thing is a different story, but all the comments, he's a danger to everybody else and all that. I don't like that either, honestly. I mean, and I'm still waiting. I hope somebody can remind me of how many guys he's actually knocked off. I'm kind of, and I've got an open mind about it. It's like, how many people has he actually T-boned or, so. Yeah, but I'm just chuffed. Chuffed that he's there again. Yeah, nice to have the one mix.
So, Robbie, to talk, give me your kind of thought pattern around the Pecco and Maverick Vinales incident, because I see it as a proper racing incident. It's
Yeah.
something I've been there before. But if you were to put blame on someone, and that's what we do these days, there's always going to be someone's fault.
Absolutely.
I lean towards Pecco Bagnaia.
Absolutely, Rob. Absolutely. So there's two ways to look at it. So when a guy passes you, and you know that he's run wide a little bit, naturally he's going to want to bring it back, isn't he? You know what I mean? So you've got to anticipate that the guy's going to want to bring it back online. The flip side of that is, if you dive bomb a guy and you run wide, you kind of got to anticipate that he's going to want to make a move. The thing with that thing, though, the next corner was a left-hander, wasn't it? You know what I mean? Yes. So Pecco should have been anticipating, like, hey, he's got to bring it back. No, it's easy for me to talk like that. I mean, what I know kind of thing. But like you said, I think if you've got to apportion any kind of blame, I think it's got to be Pecco, honestly. Yeah, I think he, and I was having the same conversation this morning with Cam and Shay. Those guys with your helmet on, your peripheral, you don't see the wheel until it's kind of in front of you almost, So a lot of what you're watching on TV, I should have done this, I should have done that, man. Until you're sitting on that thing and your head might be turning this way or whatever, maybe to look around the turn. The next thing, there's a handlebar on your side, So that particular instance, I would say that Pecco should have thought more than twice about that move, honestly. Yeah, I think Viñales, he had the right way there, if there's a right way.
Yeah, it exists. Yeah. One thing that did infuriate me, I mean, we talked about penalties and we know them. One thing I cannot understand, some of the decisions, like you said, you look back at it afterwards and you can see where the stewards are kind of getting their thought pattern from. I still don't agree with it, but it is what it is. Brad Binder's long lap penalty. How does a rider outbreaks him up, run wide, lose a position, lose a second and a half, 2 seconds that he's fought so hard to gain, and then still gets penalized the long lap penalty for cutting the track and not losing enough time? That I don't understand.
I don't know, Rob. Like, listen, I've never been a fan of officialdom, as you might know. So, no, but a lot of this stuff is like, even Motor America, worldwide now, it starts to rain, it starts to drizzle, and you've got to have a rain light on your bike, So what I'm saying is, for an average privateer or whatever, sometimes a bit of a mission to fit the rain light. Now, I sat and I watched, and I thought, when did anybody shunt anybody else because they couldn't see the guy in front of them? Who was sitting in an office one day and decided, you know what, these guys need to run a rain light or some kind of light on the bike when it's raining? Because if it's raining that hard, you're going to be in the pits anyway. But what I'm trying to get at, it's like, so who's sitting there going, if they cut across here, because I think it was pretty uniform. I think everybody that weekend who missed whatever that turn was, I think they actually have a long lap. You know what I mean? Yes, I think some of the Red Bull rookies kids. But it's just one of those where I would just love to have a discussion with the guy and go, so why? You know what I mean? Why? And maybe there's a really good reason. I don't know. But certainly doesn't seem like it when the guy's losing 2 seconds anyway.
Yeah, it's madness because he's lost the time. He's done himself an injustice.
Yeah.
Brad's worked so hard to get back up there, done himself this injustice of now, oh, geez, I've got to do all that again to try and catch up and try and pass to Jack Miller again. Yeah. And then gets a long lap. And again, this is where race direction afterwards, there should be a Simon Crafall with an interview with one of them saying, right, tell us how to do it. Oh, well, we work it out. If you go on that patch, you've got to lose 1.7 seconds. And Brad only lost 1.5 seconds. So that's why we gave him a long lap. You know what I mean? You've got to...
Rob, well, they've got to go old school and just put dirt on the side of the tracks again. And you know what I mean? Like with that thing with Bezzecchi and Marc could have been in the dirt. Back in the old days, he would have been probably on his ass, as I say. I mean,
but that's what I'm getting at here. So Dorna and everything you're giving these riders ammunition to push boundaries, push harder, do everything. Casey Stoner still said the worst thing they could have done was give extra runoff in MotoGP, because now it gives riders the ammunition to push harder, to do those kind of moves.
Yeah.
Would Bezzecchi have tried that move knowing there was an extra runoff?
Right, exactly, 100%.
Maybe not.
Well, I'm once again, I'm old school, and man, I've lost a brother, because of no runoff. But I said a long time ago, from a pure spectacle point of view, I think the tracks have almost got too safe in terms of the spectators are too far removed.
Yes.
Having said that, 250,000 people, whatever it is on the weekend, they didn't seem too bothered about being far removed from the action, did they? So, but yeah, I think there is that. Hey, you want the crowd as close to the action as possible, and obviously with reasonable runoff. But the modern day racetracks, and it's hard for me to get my head around it because I've just never ridden on anything like that in my life, But it is what it is, But man, race direction, like you said, it's just too much of a talking point. Every podcast you listen to, we've got Jason Pridmore and Greg White here who have a similar thing on a Tuesday. Every weekend they start off with race direction. I listen to like Keith Ewan and then the Crash.net thing.
Crash.net, yeah.
It's just too much of a talking point. But they've created a monster. Yeah.
The problem is, Robbie, and if I go back to South Africa, SWAT Corps. We first went racing that new SWAT Corps kind of layout.
Yeah.
Our bikes were 140 horsepower, no traction control and that.
Right.
And, we enjoyed it. I enjoyed it. It was great. We kind of built up to 200 horsepower and the bikes outgrew the track. And I was going, for shit's sake, we're coming into that turn for 20, 30, 40 k's an hour faster now. That wall has stayed the same. And I think that's what's happening in MotoGP. That is, they're outgrowing the tracks. They are getting too fast for these racetracks. I walked, and last year I got to walk, Assen. I've ridden Valencia. On TV, they look like these beautiful, wide, sweeping tracks. They're goat kart tracks, many of them. And I still remember riding around Valencia for the first time and thinking, how the hell do these guys get a MotoGP bike around here? Same with LeMans. It's start-stop. And that is the biggest kind of safety thing, I think, is that, the bikes are getting too fast for the tracks.
Well, and I think something you just touched on briefly right at the beginning was tires, and something that always stuck with me, Ben Spies, pretty soon after he gave up. And I think Ben Spies was a really insightful guy.
Yeah.
So in one of his, and he used to go into the commentary booth actually and talk a little bit. And he said then, and that might have even been the Bridgestone days, I'm not sure, but he goes, the tires have just got too good. This is going back whenever it was. I don't know when he stopped, 20 or something, And even before that, I was going, I think the problem is the tires are just too good these days. And now with the Michelin, this operating temperature window that they've got of a couple of degrees, and it's either too hot or too cold, and it's just too finicky, isn't it? It's what I think 8 guys crashed on Friday in that one session. 8.
Yep.
So I just wish, and it's something that just goes through my head, even in terms of an environmental thing. Can you imagine how many tires get thrown away from motorsport every single weekend? And I should say the same thing. Remember back now this is going back to the good old days, but man, we used to race on a set of tires, use that for the first session at the next. So I think we're just using too many. I think the tire allocation is just too high. Cam and them go through 16 tires a weekend.
Jeez.
16 tires a weekend, it's like, it's crazy to me. We should just use more durable. Now, once again, it's easy to talk, but I just wish we had more durable tires. And funny enough, there's the same argument in motocross a little bit here with super. Every weekend, these guys getting hurt in Supercross, and they're going, "Oh, we need to slow things down." There's a guy called Jason Wygand who's big on the motocross side. And he goes, "Man, the tires are just too good. They're tearing up the tracks. You have these big ruts everywhere, and so." I think tires are a big issue.
I mentioned it in my last talking MotoGP, and I said I would hate to be a Michelin tire technician.
Right.
Yep. They damned if you do, damned if you don't, because you're giving these riders the greatest tire in the world, and you're just giving them more and more grip. They're pushing the envelope more and more and more. But like you said, at 0.001 of a degree this way or that way, or tire pressure this way and that way, and it folds. And a lot of people give Michelin stick. Your tires are folding and these guys are crashing, but they don't realize how these riders are pushing them because they've given them such a great product.
Exactly.
These riders feel confident.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? So you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. So
where the speed is highlighted so much, corner speed, Rob, is when the guys crash.
Yeah.
And those things get into then you just go, wow.
But that's what I'm saying. Is the answer not slow these guys down?
I think tires, honestly. And once again, I don't know how you do it. Truly don't know how you do it. But I think just less of an allocation. It's just like, okay, guys, you're getting one set per session, whatever it may be.
But you see, as a fanboy, I'm going, no, don't slow the riders down. I want to see them go fast and crash and push the limits. But then, as a journalist and a pundit and a former racer, knowing, you've got to slow these guys down because, I don't want to see anything happen to these guys, where they're crashing and landing up in barriers because, as you said, the speed is highlighted once they crash and you see where they land up and how fast they're going. You look at the Kota MotoGP, where Martin and Marquez crash. I mean, you would never really think guys are starting to crash in positions and places where you never thought they would be crashing. Darren Binder coming out of that turn 1 and landing up in the wall. That's, you know what I mean? It's like,
Rob, like you said, Swartkorps, when we only rode 600s, turn 3, the quick right-hander?
Yes, they're right, yeah.
That was pin, you know what I mean? I would hate to ride 1,000 rounds Swartkorps. So that's your point. I know, I get what you're saying. It's like, turn 3 and turn 4 Swartkorps on a big bike. No, thank you.
Robbie, just someone's asked the question here. What happened with Cam at the last race when his bike was literally on fire?
I broke a Conrod bolt here, Rob. Yeah. So, like his crew chief goes, it's just like never happened. And the motor, I think it done 1,000 Ks or something. So it wasn't like a super high mileage motor either. I think they normally run them about 1,500 Ks before they rebuild them. So, broken Conrod. Which is pretty, I keep a real low profile in Cam's racing, Rob. I don't get too involved. Seriously, go and watch on the sides. And I wasn't there on Friday when he had that big crash, but I could tell he was really rattled on Saturday. And to my point, he shouldn't have even been racing it.
Oh, really?
I think he'd run his bell pretty good, honestly. So, but Sunday, even the warm-up, he's looking right, Yeah. And then, I think he was disappointed with himself even on Saturday that he didn't have a go at least Heron like on the last turn, But exactly like you're saying with Darren, Cam's crashed a little bit too much. Not a whole heap, but just a tiny little bit too much. You know what I mean? So, and like you're saying, that's playing on his mind. It's going, and no matter what anybody says, when the bike's coming back in the back of a pickup truck all the time, the mechanics and the team are eventually going to go, this is not fun. Yeah. So, once again, just a pity the thing broke on Sunday. And it's easy to always say that, but I think he was in for a good race.
Robbie, talking about Yamaha, staying with Yamaha riders and the Yamaha theme, as I said, these riders have become products of ours. I take my fanboy cap off and I put my journalist cap on. I look at a Fabio Quartararo. His championship winning year, he always qualified well, and that was the foundation of his championship winning year. Qualified well, and he could be in the fight. That doesn't look like it's happening anymore, but where Fabio really took a giant leap to become world champion was mentally. He mentally got over this, hitting his screen and crying.
Yes.
And he was this happy-go-lucky guy. Fabio in the paddock was always this happy, no matter what, he was always this happy. And I saw at Portugal, the first round of the MotoGP I went to this year, I saw this already. The first round of the championship, I saw this exhausted, dejected Fabio. And I just see this Fabio that's not, I don't want to say switched off from the project, but I do want to use that phrase as Yamaha have just not come to the party, so I'm exhausted. I'm
couldn't agree more, Rob. I mean, how many times this year have you seen him throwing up his hands? How many times? Yeah, so that's not a good sign, is it? And I don't know what the answer is. Same deal. Is he not on the form that he used to be? Quiet? You know what I mean? It doesn't look like he's on the form that he used to be in my mind. He really doesn't. I mean, I know that bike's not as good as a Ducati, KTM, Aprilia even, but he just doesn't seem there. I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I'm not criticizing him because once again, it's hard not to like anybody in MotoGP anymore. I'm a fan of all of them. You know what I mean? Seriously, you go down the list. Shit, he's a nice guy. He's a good guy. There's a couple, Lacious Spargo away every once in a while. Maybe not my favorite, but admire the heck out of the guy. Boy, the whole Quartararo, Robert, confused. Honestly, every weekend I'm going, maybe this is it. I think Sunday he had a real that arm story that he. And once again, people comment about these guys either bitching or making excuses. But when you're sitting in a press room or in somewhere and somebody asks you a question, you've got to give them an answer. So you know what I mean? That's going to come across as bitching. It makes me, even Casey Stoner, you know, Stoner used to make appearances. Once again, I think Stoner's a smart guy.
Yes.
He used to make these appearances, and they used to bring him into a press conference.
Yep.
Somebody would ask him a question, he'd give an answer, and all these pundits are like, Stoner bitching again, or whining, or somebody asked him a question and he was giving them an answer. You know, it's simple. I didn't really answer your Quartararo question because I truly don't know. Is the Yamaha that bad? Don't know.
I look at it, and you know, a couple of people here also commenting that he's becoming a complainteraro and stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's justified though, because Yamaha went from world champions with Fabio, and that was already kind of pushing the envelope. They lost Maverick Vinales, and you can kind of see where Maverick was coming from now. You know, listen, nothing justifies the way Maverick acted in that whole situation. Nothing.
Yeah.
But you can understand that there were certainly, you know, he was looking at the bigger picture going, well, you guys aren't doing enough to, you know, you're resting on your laurels, you know, type thing. And where I think Fabio has the right, because he's going out there risking life and limb, pushing at the limit every time and not getting the support he needs from Yamaha. And why I think he's justified to complain is I look at it and go, right, so they've lost their 2 satellite bikes. So there's 2 guys developing. You've got Carl Crutchlow, who tests every now and then. You always hear about Danny Pedrosa testing, and Michele Perot with Ducati, and Savadori with Aprilia, you know, and Bradle with Honda. You never really hear Cal. You go to Jerez, every single test rider is there just about, except the Carl Crutchlow on Yamaha.
Yeah.
So what are Yamaha doing to fix this problem? Sure. And Fabio sitting there going, well, why must I go risk myself and push to the utter end? And so I can understand that. There's the other side of the sword where he says, we just aren't able to pass. That's our biggest problem. And then I look at it and I go, well, Fabio, if I look at the last couple of races, you know, it's not like he was making these massive inroads and getting stuck behind guys. Lamar, you know, he was lonely. He was pretty lonely. So that side, I can see him and say, listen, Fabio, shush now and, you know, get your balls going and kind of get this working. But at the same time, why should the guy, if he's not getting the support that he should be from Yamaha? Yamaha have just, it's shocking what Yamaha are doing.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not sure. It's one of those where, you know, you just wish Morbidelli obviously is, I don't know what happened to Morbidelli. 2020, the guy was unreal, you know? And then I think he hurt himself. He hurt himself and just never seems to have recovered. I think he had a good ride in Argentina or something where the track was a little bit iffy, you know, maybe the grip wasn't that great and stuff. And a lot of people are saying, maybe, because I think he actually was quicker than Quartararo even in Argentina. But Quartararo does not seem the rider that he was to me, Rob, honestly. But it might be the bike. It might. Don't know what's going on there. You know, I know, and once again, you read all these comments, Lynn Jarvis has got to go, Lynn Jarvis has got to go. I mean, I knew Lynn a little bit a long time ago, and I thought he was a brilliant guy. You know, honestly, I mean, it's a long time ago. When I was involved with Kenny Robertson, the training school in Spain and stuff, you know, but had a lot of respect and stuff for Lynn and still do. I haven't spoken to him for 10 years, but I don't know you can blame Lynn Jarvis, you know. But, and that's
I'm one of those guys that said Lynn must go.
Did you? Yeah, no. But that's why I like having these discussions, because you go, what, you know, I mean, maybe somebody knows something I don't know. It's just nice to have discussions. And
I just think
Rob, I think you're full of
No, I just look at it look, Sven Grinner makes a very good point here with Quartararo. He just hasn't got the same mental approach in bad times as someone like Brad. He needs to I don't know what, verbase now and concentrate on his riding best until Yamaha finds its solution like KTM. And look, that is again where you can criticize Fabio and say, you know what, when things were tough at KTM and stuff for like a Brad, I'm just using Brad as a reference, not just because he's our boy and whatever, but you did. There were hard times. Brad could have jumped ship last year or the year before when we were all saying, bugger KTM, they're never going to get there.
Yeah.
You know, and Brad is that mentally strong rider. Look, and I've said it before, you know, Brad put on a great picture to the press, and he always made it look like I'm suffering, but I'm okay. I can tell you now, Brad suffered. You know, Brad
really? Is that right?
He suffered. I remember Courtney sending me messages. You know, I would always send Brad, well done, and Courtney, the one, sent me a message saying, Rob, Uncle Rob, thanks so much for the message. You know, Brad really appreciates it. He's really in a bad place now. And at that point was where I went, but he's not showing it, you know. But these guys are human at the end of the day, and they do. And these guys are, to them, they're all the best racer in the world. And when they're not, it hits them hard. It really does hit them hard. That's why there are sports psychologists and stuff. You know, we saw it talking with Cam, you know, when he was told, Cam, you're not going racing anymore. The guy mentally, physically suffered, because it's all these guys know, you know, and that was where that was the difference. And I said it, that was the difference between like me and a Shares. You know, there were races where I beat Shares and I was fast and I thought, yes, I'm great, I'm fast. I never had that ultimate commitment to it. I could always go, well, if I didn't win a race or if I finished fifth, oh, that's cool. I wouldn't go train harder. I would, you know, I wouldn't go that extra mile. Whereas these guys go the extra mile because this is all they know and all they want to do. So when they, you know, when they don't do it, it's a kick in their face and a reminder to them that maybe I'm not so good. And I know Darren went through that last year a couple of times where, am I good enough to be
Darren Gerloff?
No, Darren Binder.
Oh, Darren. Yeah. Sorry,
am I good enough to be a motorcycle rider? And you got to, you know, and it's hard. How do you pick the guy up, because the results aren't there?
And once again, you know, I remember Daz. I don't even know what year it was. It was like his first year of Grand Prix, so I don't know how old he was. We get to Coda. They'd been in Argentina the week before. Sharon and Trevor are not with him. He's with the team. There were some flight delay stories that they all got. He had to find his way, 17, 18 years old, whatever it was, from Argentina to the track in Coda. The team left him on his own. There's this kid on the other side of the world. And then you read these comments, people complaining, Darren's crashing too much, or this or that, or you know what, red for me. It was like, man. And you a story. You know, you spoke about Cam's story last week. Trust me, everybody's got a story. You know what I mean? If you sit and spoke to all these guys, do you think Marquez, you know, when they say he's entitled and that, do you think that family hasn't got a story somewhere along the line? What they sacrificed to get for those two boys, you know? So, but just going back to Sven, you know, he's obviously a real student of motorsport. I think he knows his stuff. So, and I can't help thinking, well, before Quartararo came to MotoGP, he had one good ride essentially on Moto2. Barcelona, I think he won Barcelona on that speed up, whatever they used to call that thing, you know?
Yes.
And even I'm going, when he got signed for the Yamaha team, well, no, did he go to the Petronas team first? Or whatever?
Petronas, yeah.
But even then, I'm going, why? You know?
Why, yeah.
Pretty soon I realized why. You know, it's like, okay. So, yeah, I think it's just, once again, is it motivation? Is it something? But I would never write it. I would never write Quartararo off. I mean, the guy's special. Yeah.
He is special. Unfortunately, he's out of this championship as far as I can see. There just doesn't seem to be any kind of answer coming soon. But in terms of the championship, Robbie, if I had said to you at the beginning of the year that after 4 rounds or however many rounds we've done, Marco Bezzecchi would be leading it. Pecco Bagnaia would be second. Okay, cool. You can understand. It's amazing that Pecco is still second, because I don't know. I just think that Pecco's just crashed a lot more than, you know. I just always think Pecco's great. Argentina now, and I think, how's this guy still in second? But that is where the beauty of the sprint race has helped him, and a Brad Binder, because you know, Brad's sitting third in the championship. Martin, I remember Simon Crayford saying at Jerez, and I was one saying Martin's just not doing it. He's not the rider we all thought. And here he is sitting fourth in the championship, the top 4 covered by like 15 points or something.
Yeah. No, and going back to Bezzecchi, you know, I was never a huge fan of his. But I've got to tell you, I am now. You know what I mean? More and more I watch him. Besides watching him as a rider, like even as a person, I mean, man, he just seems like a good guy, you know. But going back to, where was Jerez? Yeah, I mean, he didn't shape it a race at all. He was nowhere. You know what I mean? In the sprint race, not bad, but nothing. Sunday, I don't know what happens. But that's the beauty about MotoGP at the moment. It's just so unpredictable. It's like, who's going to show up this weekend? And the one encouraging thing, I know he's had a couple of crashes, but man, Brad consistently is kind of in that not a surprise anymore when Brad's running top 3. Not a surprise. Obviously, we all hope he gets his qualifying better. You know what I mean? It's starting from 10th. There's always that chance that something's going to happen, like what happened on Sunday. So, but you know, and like I know I carry on about my family, but Shay and she loves Brad. And Brad can win the world championship, Brad. To me, it's a bit of a pipe dream. You know, it's a bit of a pipe dream. Now you're going, hang on a second.
This is real.
All the stuff in my mind when I'm watching this. It was through the gates on the weekend in France. I think he's not missing a trick. Nobody in South Africa. By not trying to have no idea what the interest is in Brad. Can you imagine Kyalami with Brad? They're on a 3 bike. You know, I think that.
Oh, just Robbie's signal's gone tits up again. Let's see if he can just recover himself. But yeah, I got the gist of that. Can you imagine going to Kyalami and having a Darren Binder on a Moto 2, a Rashane Woodley potentially on a Moto 3, and a Brad Binder on a MotoGP bike? That would be absolutely fantastic. Stephen Berry, yes, you are right. Pecco's leading by 1 point. I am wrong. Stephen Berry is right, but that's why I have Stephen Berry on the show, to correct me when I get it wrong. So yes, thank you for that, Stephen. I rate Bez and Martin one behind Brad, but neither will be consistent like Brad. Pecco should be walking away with this, looking at the contenders. Brad is the man to be the challenger. Stephen, I 100% agree with you, because Bezzecchi kind of had that same career path in Moto 2, where he would have these kind of races like he did in Argentina. Okay, Argentina was in the wet, but like this race at Le Mans. And then the next weekend, he would find himself, you know, just not on the pace. And Martin's the same. So I agree with you. I think Brad is the big title contender there. We've got Robbie back here, so let's bring him back into the picture. So, Robbie, just finish your thought there on what you were saying about Brad and everyone at Kyalami.
No, just wondering, Rob, you know, like I said, I might be living in fantasy land or whatever, but I can't help thinking that Kyalami or somebody at home should be doing whatever it takes to try and have a Grand Prix right now. I would love to see, and once again, I might be out of touch. Maybe that interest is long gone. You know, maybe I am living in the past when we go 60, 70, 80,000 people at Kyalami, but I would love to be able to see. I think the place would go crazy. Yeah?
It would. The roof would literally be taken off. I'm going to talk a little bit about that now. I'm just going to answer this Carlos question. Did Jack hold Brad up on Sunday? Definitely. You know, but that's racing, Robbie. You know, people also went on Facebook and said, oh, Jack ruined Brad's race. He held him up. It's not Jack's prerogative to let Brad go past him. And KTM should have told Jack to let Brad pass. No. And Brad wouldn't want it like that. Brad wouldn't want
it. If it comes down to the last race of the year, you know, or something like that, then maybe. But right now, there's no way. And like you said, we're 4 races in. Who would have thought Marco Bezzecchi would be 1 point off the World Championship lead?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? So it's way too early. Way too early. And honestly, knowing Brad the way I do, he wouldn't want that anyway. You know, but I think it highlights modern day. I think the aero thing, Rob, has got so much to do with it now. I truly. You know, and I'm not defending Marquez because he crashed, you know, but as it happens, I mean, man, I wonder what happens when the guy passes you like and takes your air away. Does it affect it? You know, so Cam was asking Miguel Oliveira that year. Oliveira came out early on in the year to do his shark promotion and stuff, and Oliveira was just going exactly that. You know, when somebody comes past you, you just got to be a little bit careful, because now you've got 350 kilograms of downforce that's been taken away. You know, so. I think the aero thing and Freddie Spencer keeping an eye on everybody is making guys think twice a little bit. So,
yeah, well, Brad still came out with a comment last year where he lost his wing, and he said it was like pushing one of those checkers trolleys where the one wheel points this way and the other wheel points this way when you try and ride the things. So, yeah, it is. I agree with you. And I mean, like you said, a lot of the podcasts and everyone talk about the general fan consensus is those two things, that maybe aero and race direction are just starting to take the sport, you know, kind of into the Formula One realms. I know they're testing rider communication now, which I just think is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. to bring in rider communication into MotoGP. I don't know what you think, but I just think, why even
Rob, can I tell you why I stopped watching Formula One? Is because I got so tired of listening to a crew chief say to a driver, or crew engineer, whatever they are, like all these guys are doctorates, okay, take it easy for 2 laps, okay, go fast for 2 laps. I swear to God, it did my head in. I'm just going, no. And once again, even the tire conservation thing, that's why I kind of like that sprint racing.
Yeah,
let's go. I made a note. I don't know what you think, but that sprint race, I think it should pay full points. I think it would be worth looking at just paying full points, Get the guys from 10th to 15th racing hard for that last point.
I agree with you. And Shez commented on the one post and said, South African motorsport, we got one thing right, is that we had 2 sprint races,
Yes, yeah, right.
I think it's the way to go because, like you said, it eliminates a lot of these outside factors that some riders battle with. And you were talking about the tire and who conserves the tire best. And the problem with Formula One is it's not necessarily won by the fastest guy on the racetrack. It could most of the time. Yeah, it's won by strategy and, like you said, the guy with the best doctorate off track. And that's why we cannot have rider communication coming into MotoGP. These guys already, last year, Brad and Darren showed me what they go through in a lap. Okay, so I got to press this button at this time, this and this. Now you want to throw in some guy in his ear saying, listen, just careful, there's Pecco's right on your tail. Just come on, man. Come on.
I know who I'd be. I'd be like Kimi Räikkönen telling them to shut up and leave me alone. It's like leave me alone.
Just to go back to the Kyalami comment, and I get asked it a lot, and all I can say is I know there has been a lot of discussion, and I know it's something that they're desperately trying to make happen. Again, my 2 cents and kind of what I've heard through the grapevines is Kyalami hasn't been approved as a safe enough track to host MotoGP. Facility-wise, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Parking-wise, it needs more, kind of access parking in that. But then you look at like the new second last right hand. That's just not safe enough. There's a wall right there.
I haven't even been to the new track yet.
Yeah, no. So safety-wise, there needs to be upgrades. Those upgrades are going to cost anything between, I'm just putting out figures there, 1 million and 10 million rand.
Yeah.
So Kyalami have got to fork that out before they can even entertain the idea. Then if you entertain the idea, and I was at the Mugello round last year, and I heard firsthand all the complaints. The tracks pay to host the MotoGPs. So they pay that 25 million or whatever. Yeah. They make their money back in ticket sales revenue.
Yeah.
As big as Kyalami is, you're not going to make your 40 million.
No, exactly. At 20 to 1, whatever they're at,
unless you're going to charge 100,000 rand a ticket.
No. It would have to be a government or whatever. You know what I mean?
You're going to lose
promoting South Africa.
So that is the biggest handbrakes with Kyalami. And like you said, it's such a pity because at the moment we are thriving with Brad, Darren, and now we're going to carry on to the next, talking about racing families and brilliant jobs and the future of South African motorsport. And Robbie, I think this is a touchy point for us because we know the guys so well. The Moodley family, Arushan Moodley, first podium in Red Bull Rookies. Now, we raced against Arushan. You've been team manager to Arushan. You've been a big part of Arushan's racing career. Yeah. I've been his teammate. Arushan and his family, and I say it to him all the time, if I could have a picture of a family hanging up in my wall, that I could say that is the kind of family I want to be like. I want to be like that guy in terms of being a father, a businessman. It's the Moodleys because they are just salt of the earth. You know what I mean? And I was working over the weekend, so I didn't watch the racing live. But when my brother posted that Roshane Moodley had got on the podium, I got emotional. I didn't cry like a baby or anything, but I took a deep breath and I went, you know what? That is the greatest news I have heard all year. Other than Brad winning and that, which has been great.
No, but they're not. Same as you. And then there's Brad in Risha's corner. You know what I mean?
Fantastic.
How awesome is that?
I know I saw those pictures and you get emotional about it because I know that Arushan and them, yes, they are lucky that they've got, they're in a position to be able to do that financially and everything. But still, I have seen them in Portugal and where Arushan's gone, we've been on the road for 4 days. They've got this little, Vito kind of thing that they've turned into a camper van that they live out of. They don't stay in 5-star hotels and. They went from that track to this track for testing, back to and they are traveling thousands of Ks and miles across the land to do all this as a family, wife and sister and daughter in the car with them, sacrificing friends,
honestly.
The kid life. These kids should be at the mall watching movies, trying to kiss girls and kiss boys, and they're not doing any of that. They are going racing for Rouchet.
Well, a couple of things, Rob. So, like you said, Arushan, my earliest memories of Arushan, I got back to South Africa in 98. I'd been away a long time. So, got back there. One of the first guys that came up to me was this young Arushan Woodley. And because I guess I had a reputation that I'd worked with Kenny Roberts and was a good instructor and whatever. And he was full of questions. And Arushan's, he's quiet. And I think Rouchet's even quieter than he was, But one of those silent assassins, So, and it's one of those, it's the same as Trevor and Sharon. Like people go, oh, well, they're lucky that they could do that. I'm lucky. The reason why they could do that for the kids and why Tiru could do it for Arushan is because they worked really hard at what they did. It's not luck, trust me, And once again, when Arushan rode for me, man, Tiru sometimes would sleep on the couch in the, we would have like an Airbnb or something, and there he is sleeping on the couch. So, and Rob, that's why I'm glad you kind of highlight that. You had that discussion. I obviously watched your show with Cam last week. I mean, for sure, it was hard for us, but we were having fun. It was hard, but we were having fun because there was like 3 weeks off or 2 weeks off between each race. And sure, we were living in a caravan and all that kind of stuff, but, it was fun. Those guys, I think it's touring around Europe and it's probably harder than what we did. And that's one of the reasons, honestly, why I took the easy route and let's just go to America. We do, the traveling is vast, the distances are crazy, but it's just a whole lot easier. It's a hell of a lot easier.
Well, you find yourself a base, in America, you find yourself a base and you work there. They don't have a base. Okay, they've got in Spain and that, but they're never there. And their roots in South Africa and their family and friends and, the exchange rate is very
our caravan was based on Danny Walker's property, which he had this company called American Supercam. He had a dirt track in his backyard. It was, I don't know, he had 20 acres or something. And we had our caravan there and motocross track. And so Cam, he could ride TTR 125s all day. Danny got him a YZ 250 to go and ride motocross, So from that point of view, there were hard times, no question. And like I told you privately, when Cam in 2017, when he kind of decided that we couldn't do this anymore, it was heart-wrenching. I'll never forget that moment, standing in line when he came to me, standing in line waiting for a shower at Coda, and he came and said, Dad, I can't do this to you anymore. I just can't see this anymore. So everybody's got a story, What Sharon and Trevor had to give up, not give up, but sacrifice.
Hey, Robbie's going to have to tell Cam to pay for his internet bill because it's struggling a bit there. But we'll get Robbie back and finish off our conversation. But it is, I have the utmost respect for the Binders, for the Mudleys now. Robbie was talking about, it was tough, but it was, fun at the same time. And I remember Rushan saying, it's hard and it's difficult and you miss a lot of things. And it's sometimes you wake up and it's, but they're doing it together as a family. And it is fantastic to see. And very, very proud of them. We've got Robbie back, so we'll continue. There we go. There it is. No, there you are. You so I was just saying, like you said, it's tough and everything. And I remember Rushan saying the same thing to me. It's tough, and there's days we think, what are we doing? But we're doing it together as a family, and that's what makes it a little bit easier. And they're creating these memories, and they're doing it all together. So,
tell you what, though, that kid's got something, Rob.
Yeah,
Rushan has got something special.
He really does. He really does. I've had, and let me tell you, a lot of people in the paddock can see it as well. He trains with the likes of Alonso Lopez. I remember Brad and Aaron telling me they went motarding with him, and they were like, this kid is something. And Arushan's gone around about it the right way. He's put him into various different kind of formulas of motorsport. And learned his trade doing this, a bit of flat pack. You can't just do this and this. So the recipe's there. The recipe is certainly there. Yeah.
No, just I watched him getting interviewed. you just want to grab him and give him a hug. It's just special. Yeah.
He's a great little kid. The one thing, and Brad and Darren and I have said it to him, and I'm sure Arushan knows it as well. Arushan had it, sometimes, but they do need to have a little bit. He does need to have a little bit more of a killer instinct. Although, having said that, I've seen it come out in one or two of the Red Bull Rookies Cup races now, where he's shoved it on the inside, and when he crashed in the second race. It's horrible to see him crash, but you want to see that reaction. If you had seen him get up and go, oh well, damn it.
Yeah.
When you see a rider get up and go and run, and that passion, right, this kid wants to do something. And his interview was brilliant. I was so worried when I saw that microphone pointed at him. I thought he was going to go, the tires were great. But he stood proudly, and the South African flag on him in the interview, and like you said, seeing the pictures with Brad.
Just good on Brad.
It was fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. And beyond, 100%. Yeah.
It was fantastic to see. But speaking about that, Robbie, I mean, there is a flourish of South Africans worldwide at the moment. I know you were going to ask me.
I was going to ask you, Rob, because I kind of just, I'm not going to lie, I've had a lot of free time on my hands the last 6 weeks because I haven't been really working. So I've been, and every week I see there seems like there's a whole lot of kids in CRV. Doran Herrera. I know Doran's been kind of away for a long time, but I think Chris Wright's doing something. Obviously, Brent Herron and BSB. Every time Philip Atkinson wins something in England, every weekend it seems, it just seems like there's a lot of guys all over the world doing good stuff. And on the technical side too, like we still got Chris Lessing over here, who's regarded as the best suspension guy. We've got Dudley Crammond, who's running the Triumph Motocross R&D department. We got Ian Harrison, who runs the KTM motocross team. This has seen so many guys throughout the world, and it's like, geez, where are they all coming from? I think David McFadden, is he doing something? It seems like, so just a lot of guys.
Yeah, we would need a whole show to go through the list of riders. I can tell you, Chris Wright, Tag Janssen van Rensburg, and Doran Herrera racing in the Italian Championship. Luca Coccioni was also over in the Italian Championship on Aprilia. We've got obviously Stephen Orendahl, brilliant ride from him on the weekend.
I was going to say, how's Stephen? You know what? Same thing. Every time Stephen rides something, whether it's LeMans or something, there he is up near the front. So really impressive, yeah.
And Robbie, what I think is making him a better rider, and to me, what still keeps Sheridan in the mix and as a fast rider these days is having that versatility. So, Stephen Orendahl at the moment goes from his Yamaha R1 over to his Honda CBR 1000 in World Endurance, goes from Dunlop tires to, we've lost Robbie again, but I'll just carry on talking. So it gives him that versatility, and Stephen, for me, is a much better rider for it. He World Supersport 600. We all know what he did there. It's fantastic to see Stephen, and I think Stephen is riding better than Stephen has probably ever ridden before, because he's had to become this versatile rider of all these different things being thrown at him. And that, to me, is where Ducati MotoGP get it right with a rider like Michele Pirro. He's racing a Panigale V4 Superbike on Pirelli tires. Then next weekend he's on a MotoGP bike with Michelin tires. Then next weekend he's on CV or doing this with Michelin tires. He's done World Endurance. So he's bringing all of that in. And to me, that is what Yamaha MotoGP is missing. They don't have this extra information coming in. They've got Fabio and Franco, who know a 2019 Yamaha that they love. So their feedback is, that's good, but just give me the 2019 bike back. Yeah, that's good, but give me the 2019 back. And that's where they've gone now. From the comments that I've heard, Fabio has just said, we're basically going back to our 2021, I think it is, or 2022 chassis. So Robbie's back. So Robbie, I was basically just saying, I'm really impressed with Stephen, and I think he's riding better than he ever has because of the versatility. He's riding an R1 one week, he's riding a CBR Honda the next week, he's riding Michelin tires one week, Dunlop tires the next, Pirelli the next, and he's taken all of that, gelled it together, and for me I'm touch and go with Stephen because he was my biggest rival and he irritated the hell out of me in Supersport 600s in South Africa, and in many ways I thought he was a spoiled little brat that I hated because he was just back in South Africa, oh, he's cheating, that's why he's beating me. We all had these kind of things, and we've grown up now and we can admit them. So I always had my back up a little bit with Stephen Windal. I did. He was that one guy that just got under my skin because he just had the best and was one of those spoon-fed kind of riders, in my point of view. And I must say, I take my hat off and I massive amounts.
I made a note on my notepad there, Stephen Windal, because I'm a little bit the same as you, not the same as you, but it's like, maybe got everything given to him. But I got to tell you, like, even back in those days, I'd go, who's out at Red Star on a Wednesday? Who's wherever? So it all sounds like fun. Yeah, well, Stephen's riding every weekend. And it sounds like fun. You still got to get up in the morning and go and do that. You know what I mean? So, and I remember Dave and I were trail riding once out in the sticks, like from his house, like past Siemens, like way in the sticks, Come across Stephen pedaling his bicycle, like 30 miles in the middle of nowhere. And I'm going, oh, okay, hang on. This guy, and he's out there, not because he likes riding bicycles. I think he did anyway, but it was, the race coming up next weekend, and he was working hard at it, So huge respect. And more, like you said, over the year, I watched him closely on that Moto2 at Coda when they came to.
Yes.
I watched him, that guy's got it. Like, seriously. And you know what that Moto2 deal is like. Your bike can be just a little huge in a family game.
So continue the list of South Africans. Obviously, Cam, Maddie, Dominic Doyle in AMA. In Moto America.
I'm just going to interrupt you real quick. The pity for me is Sam Lockhoff at the moment.
Yes,
Sam's he's still carrying an injury, Rob, and he rode the whole of last year injured basically with a broken low leg problem. Had more surgery at the end of the year, and when I saw him at Daytona, he was still on crutches, or still on a walking stick, should I say?
Yeah. Okay.
Spoke to his dad the other day, and all credit to Sam. He's gone and done an EMT course, but it sounds like he's desperate to start racing. So I suggested they go and see Dr. Versveld in Sunninghill, because I know Versveld has fixed a few guys' legs, So hope to see Sam back.
Okay, I was going to ask you. I haven't seen much about him, and my brother, between my brother and I, we try and stay on top of every single South African. And it's hard because they're very frustrating. A lot of them don't put a lot out, so you got to go digging it and like drag it out of them. But that's good to hear. Thanks for that inside information. We have got David McFadden. So he's pretty much, from what I understand, running a team in the Spanish Championship. So they got like Perron Parassarasaman, who basically rides like the R6 Cup. A slightly northern regions kind of level of racing there. You got Jared Schultz, you got Brett Roberts. We've got someone mentioned it here now. Dino Iozzo, Blaze Baker, who unfortunately also had hurt himself. AJ Fenter's going back over to the Isle of Man TT, the bike he built in South Africa, and he's riding the Super Sport class for Craig Wilson Racing. So he's going to do well there. Who else am I missing? There's someone else that I'm missing. But there's a bunch of them out there doing a great job. And like you said, it looks glitz and glamour, and lucky them that they've got the money and that. But it's not always the case. And I've just admitted to it. I was that spoiled little guy, not spoiled little guy, but that guy that jumped to conclusions saying, "Oh, bastards, why not me and them and them and them."
No, for sure, we've all been there. Chip on our shoulder, absolutely.
She's still doing world endurance. Of course, we can't forget him. So,
she's kind of got the ball rolling again, didn't he? You know what I mean? He was the guy who, there was that obviously golden era of Eckhold and Ballington and Alan North and all that kind of stuff, and then obviously Dave a little bit, and then not much. I mean, that was kind of the last of it until Shares was the one who was like, "I've got to go race." So, I remember meeting him when he was 16 years old or whatever. He just wanted to race in Europe or World Championship Club stuff.
Yeah, and people don't know that story as well. His first year in Perricini, we've spoken about it before, where he had, stupidly had all his money in his backpack, traveling Europe in a camper van, parked on the side of the road one day, came back and had stolen all his money.
Yeah. Another story. Different
story. But it's
great. Who I think stole it?
Who?
Ricky.
Probably was Ricky the bastard.
Ricky's my best mate.
But like you said, every rider has a story. Not only us South African boys, but Marc Marquez, Fabio Quartararo. They've all got stories, and it does. Like I said, I was working on the weekend, and I'd take a glance at my phone every now and then. And it's hard from a media point of view, because if I go comment there for Motor Rider World and say, guys, listen, don't do, I'm going to unfollow you, and everything's about. So it's a fine line that I've got to try and play, but I just hate it, man. I just absolutely hate it that, like you said, the personal attacks. Yes, they are products, and we can give our racing opinions, but don't go personally attack the guy and wish that he would retire. And it's time, you know what I mean?
At least you know the guy, Rob. If you've hung out with him and you've gone to a party with him and he's a complete dick, then you're welcome to say it. But if you don't know somebody, you just got to be a little bit careful. That's all, So, but honestly, Rob, what you've done for the South African guys, it's much appreciated. It's you've been in everybody's corner. I mean, no one owes you more gratitude than Darren. Honestly, like I've never known anybody to back a rider like you've backed Darren. I mean, Brad's natural, but
yeah.
And we haven't seen the best of Darren just yet.
No. That's the frustrating part for me, because it's. I can understand why some people, when people post comments about Darren as well. When I've got my fanboy cap on, I just want to go and F you and how dare you. But the reality is, he does crash and he does do stupid things and he does throw away it. I was standing trackside with Trevor at Portimao, and we could see that Darren was starting to struggle and lose that 0.2 of a second and finish 8th in your first Moto2 race. Don't push the envelope and crash. So that is the frustrating side of being a Darren fan. But we watched them from when they were 8 years old, and Darren couldn't even stand, and Brad couldn't stand, and Cam. And there's this massive talent inside of Darren, and it showed once or twice last year in MotoGP. And people say, but he's had his chances now, and he has had a lot of good chances. And I've said to people already this year, Darren he's got to start producing results, because he has had chances, and he's produced results, but enough to keep him in Moto2. And
it's a little bit like Cam. I'd just like to see a little bit of continuity with him on the same team for more than 1 year. I think, and man, I can't help thinking, maybe it's fantasy thinking, but if he had been on that Aprilia instead of Raul Fernandez, who knows? Because I think what Darren did last year was pretty special. Honestly, I know he started crashing a little bit too much towards the end of the year again, but.
Yeah, but I was involved with the team, and I can honestly say that was a combined. The team had lost their sponsor. They had given up the Yamaha project. They were going Aprilia, so there was a complete. I remember going to the first couple of races, and there was this. They were in Darren's corner. Darren this and Darren that, and then that just faded and fizzled away. As soon as they kind of knew, okay, our Darren project's over, the Yamaha project's over, we're focusing on next year. Everything went downhill.
Just going through the motions,
Exactly, and that's what I try to get across. But again, I had that fine line of being a journalist that was allowed in the paddock and allowed to be with his team, because every time I walked in with my media pass, the team were like, listen, don't film this, don't do this. So you've got to, and one thing I learned with the MotoGP paddock is there's a lot of stuff that has to stay in the paddock. Sure. And if you take it out of that paddock, you just won't be let into that paddock. So there's that fine line. So I've got a lot of great brass stories for people to listen to and stuff. To certain people, again, I can't just go, there's a lot of Brad stuff that you want to say, but you don't want to break that trust. So it's a fine line, and it's the hard thing, and that's why I always talk about my caps, my fanboy cap and my media cap, because it's a fine line to play those two kind of roles. And
well, I'm glad you are a fanboy. I'm glad you still got that fanboy side, to be honest. You know what I mean? Well, a lot of people don't have that. You know what I mean?
No, and that's what frustrates me when I sit in the media center at MotoGP and I see the same faces for the last 20 years, because it's a job for them, and that's why it's so easy for them to sometimes write the crap that we have to see, or say, the headlines that, I'm in a lot of these debriefs, and Stephen Berry points it out a lot of the times with a lot of the platforms. I don't want to mention names, but he'll say, you've taken 3 words out of this whole paragraph and you've put it into there to make click, and it frustrates me, because a lot of them aren't fans anymore. If you were a real fan, you wouldn't do a lot of the stuff that you're doing. I often, and to my detriment, in terms of making money and a lot of things, put my fanboy kind of comments in that out first, rather than what's going to clickbait, what's going to make me money in the media game. But you know what? I'm very privileged to be able to do this. I'm very privileged to have guys like you that'll come on the show. I'm very privileged to have, Cam take his time out, Brad, Darren. I've been very privileged, so I'll carry on doing it, and I'll carry on supporting the South African boys. And yeah, Robbie, I really appreciate you taking out the time to do this, even though you've got the time. Which you told me now. So listen, this definitely won't be the last time. What I will tell you is tell Cam to give you some of that Yamaha fresh and lean money to get you some good internet access.
Oh yeah, no, he's thinking about the future. Let's put it that way. For like every time I talk to him now, he's thinking more and more about the future. So yeah, he's got Barber next weekend. Or this weekend coming actually. So just hoping for a good solid weekend there, Rob.
Okay, so Robbie, to finish off, not as Robbie Petersen, Cameron's dad, as a fan, a critic, a pundit, a crew chief, or whatever you want to call yourself. What's missing for Cam to be the Jake Gagne, or what's missing for Cam to be the Moto America champion? Because we know the talent's there.
Yeah, no, 100%, Rob. No, I mean, I think. So this is totally unbiased. I honestly think, in terms of sheer talent on a motorcycle, he's one of the best I've ever seen. You know what I mean? That seriously, and that's why I wanted to pursue it. I knew from an early age, going, look, you need a package. There's no question. And I knew that maybe focus-wise or something. And then him and I have had this discussion. But I tell you, Rob, he's maturing. I think being involved with Josh Hayes a couple of years ago really turned Cam around, honestly.
Yes.
Because it is almost frustrating, like you said with Darren. You go, man, he's got the talent, And some of it was not his fault, just not staying on the same bike for 2 years in a row. And we were very lucky that there were one or two people who stood by him, and he was done. 3 years. 3 years in a row. You're done. And I think the guy that took the biggest chance on him was probably Danny Walker, having the factory Honda team. He came in 2017. He had done 4 races, and 3 of those he threw up in his helmet and couldn't finish. So, and Danny signed him up to a factory Honda team. So, to answer your question, what Jake's got over everybody else, Rob, you've never met a guy with a mind like this.
Really?
Seriously, Rob. He comes. You look at him. He looks like a hippie, and man, that guy meditates for 8 hours a day. And I remember Stuart Johnson, who was a journalist back at home. This is going back in the 80s. And Stuart said to me, he used to practice Buddhism, and he go, and Buddhism, I guess, meditation is a big part of that whole culture, whatever you want to call it. So, and I remember Stuart saying to me, racing is it's kind of like meditation, and
frame of mind.
And I think that's where Cam slowly, he's getting to that point now where I think it's still hard to match Jake, because that guy goes into another world, seriously, with that mind of his. But Cam is he's training hard. He's trying to do all the right stuff, Like I said, I watch him on that motocross bike, and I'm going, you can't help thinking, I wish. And they're all good on motocross bike these days. Jake got qualified for an outdoor motocross national, so he's seriously, But you put Cam on a flat tracker, it's like holy smokes. Put him on a supermoto. Most spectacular thing I've ever seen in my life was Cam, Garrett Gerloff, and Bobby Fong on a supermoto track. Rob, I still remember that track going, holy, pay big money to watch this,
Yeah, oh man.
So he's got an unbelievable team. I think Cam Bobby on the BMW is going to add a different mixture, because you've said before you're a big Bobby fan, and that BM is fast.
Yeah.
So everybody goes, World Superbike, they're not doing much. But every time I look at BSB, there's Josh Brooks, whoever, you know what I mean. So that BM's good, and that Ducati, I don't like to. No, I'm going to tell you like it is. I think Petrucci was half a second slow on that Ducati than a good rider last year.
Oh, really? Yeah.
So I still think that Ducati is half a second quicker than anything out there.
Yes.
And Heron on his day, boy, that guy's got some skills, right? Seriously, some skills. So when he gets his head right, Heron's hard to beat. Maddie is a beast. Honestly, on the brakes and stuff, you've seen that guy's got a heart like this, And I can't help when I look at that whole Yamaha setup and I see number 45 and Cam Petersen, and just go, you know, and somebody wrote a comment a little while ago before one of the, and I think it was a South African guy in one of the write-ups about the Motor America race. He goes, yeah, well, that Cam and Matthew are bridesmaids, basically. Will always be bridesmaids, you know.
Yeah.
And I go, well, you know, 6 years ago, if somebody had told me Cam would win 3 Superbike races, and I would take it. I would take it, you know. But he's not satisfied. I got to tell you, he's hungry. You know, the only thing that worries me a little bit, he had such a good preseason.
Yeah.
He was actually, I think, maybe a touch quicker than Jake at the last test before they went to Atlanta. Atlanta, for whatever reason, has always been horrible to Cam, you know. And I just hope that hasn't set him back. The good thing is the next weekend is Barber, and I think Jake on there. What does he call it? Petersen Land or something like that, because Cam goes there, you know. So, and Road America is good. There's a whole lot of tracks coming up that he can shine. So yeah, just really proud. Honestly, proud of him, proud of Maddie. You know, and it sounds, it's the truth though. Like Cam said, last year I'd be watching because I worked hard last year as a crew chief, but in the 600s, you know.
Yes.
And while I was working, I'd be running back and forth, and I'd hear this Ducati come past. Whoa, because you can't. And right down there's a Yamaha, and I'm going, there's my light team.
Yeah.
With Daniela Petrucci, you know, it's like, shit, that's pretty nice. So, no, extremely, and like I said, Rob, trying harder. He's just, every time I speak to him, Dad, just been on a 10-mile run or this or that, or, you know, so, yep, all good.
That's great to hear, Robbie. Thank you so much for your insight. Listen, this is the first time I've had you on the show. It's certainly not the last time.
No,
so we'll catch up with you after the Mugello if you're available. I definitely want to get Dave on the show at some point as well.
And I'd like to watch Dave. You know, seriously, I miss the old 2 wheels days and all that.
Yes, exactly.
So I'd love to see what.
Is Richard Knowles still around?
I think he's in England, you know, but
I know his son is, but I don't know.
Because we know that Dave's not going to hold back any punches. He's going to tell you exactly what he thinks, so whether people like it or not, you know.
For some reason, I just don't know why. I always thought, just who can I get as guests, you know? And Shares, I'll definitely get Shares on every now and then. But you know,
I enjoy watching Shares.
I love my Shares, but he can be unreliable at times. But yeah, then I thought, you know, when I did the Cam, when you replied to me with watching the last show and getting Cam on board, I was like, I couldn't understand why I hadn't got you on the show. And then that clicked me onto Dave, who, you know, I did the studio stuff with, and I was like, brilliant. I've got my guests lined up for the rest of the year. So, yeah, Robbie, thank you so much. It's been great chatting to you, and we'll definitely get you back on. Everyone down the side in the comments absolutely loved your insight, loved your comments, new and old school. So, yeah, we'll do some more talking MotoGP soon, and look after yourself. And, yeah, we'll chat to you soon.
Yeah, I just want to say real quick, really appreciate, Rob, the people back home have been unreal. So all those comments, trust me, Matthew, Cam, Sam, Dom, they all look at those. So, you know, really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, South Africans are they are the best fans in the world.
Until they come second. I'll never forget Zola. Just real quick, I remember the first time Zola Bud. That's before your time, but Zola Bud. First time she finished second, it was like, she's useless, she's rubbish. You know what I mean?
Well, I always say that about the Springboks. You know, when the Springboks are winning, they're the greatest team. But when they, God forbid, they lose, and then South Africa is going to get brought down. So,
thanks, Rob.
It's passionate. South Africans are passionate. Exactly. Robbie, thank you so much. Thank you to everyone for joining us. I hope you enjoyed it. Like it, share it, get it as far and wide as possible. And until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, and catch you all real soon. Cheers.
Cheers, Rob.